And more than a year now since Quebec's most controversial politician left the scene. René Lévesque has just completed his own account of his 25-year career, and he joins us in studio today, and it's very nice to have you here. You have been out signing copies of?
I've had 2 days that, well, I'm in the second day, and I didn't think it could be that rough in a sense, because there's a sort of mixture of, recent political memories, plus that new, I'm a beginner of that, a new job, and the mix-up is difficult. Maybe I should have waited a little longer.
So, well, you've got a new career, but I want to go back to the origins of your life in New Carlisle. When you were growing up there, you had the feeling that Anglophones were imperialist oppressors.
Oh, no. It started off, we were all a family. Look, that was a small town of about 1,000 people, something like 80 or 90% English, but it was a sort of a chef-lieu.
But then it came later than that you came to
it's
the conclusion that they were the ones.
Well, it's after you become conscious of history and a few things like that you come around the junior college year, when I was at boarding school in a college in Gaspé.
But
there was a sort of embodiment of our history in the small town. I hadn't noticed that. We were all a bunch of roamers together.
You were kids together?
As kids, yeah, and we still were friends, even though I suddenly found out, realized that there was a sort of resume of what had happened to us on the French side. In other words, every dominant position and practically everything that had to do with business was in English-speaking hands.
And how do you feel now?
Well, what do you mean?
About the Anglophones?
I feel a sort of inevitable thing happened in history, which was that we were conquered. I'm not going to go back to the flood, but we were conquered, became isolated, kind of sort of workforce for people who came in and took over business, as is always the case in conquest, but it had to finish someday or other, and I think we've come out of it, at least in part, over the last 25 years, while French Quebec tried to make up for wasted time, because we had wasted time.
How do you, René Lévesque, feel about us?
If you mean...
As a group, as a collective group, are we still those West Island Anglos that make your belly burn in your book?
No. And it was never all that, I think, okay, like many people in public life, I sometimes verbally overreacted, but I've never, and I'm glad of that, I've never lacked some friends in practically all, people really close in practically all the parts of Montreal life, including other minorities than the English one, because I was a member during years for the Liberal Party of a place where it was chock full of Italian. The Greek community was also shaping up at that time, so no.
But I never feel that you've given us any credit for the effort that we made. A lot of Anglophones left Montreal, left Quebec, but a lot stayed on, and people like me who sent our kids to French school and learned French and had to struggle with les sœurs en français and so on. But you've never come out and said, listen, there are some of these people aren't half bad.
Look, I've said it often enough, but sometimes we only listen to what we think is the dominant note.
But I listen a lot.
If I go back a quarter of a century or even less, there were times when you went into a restaurant in downtown Montreal, and it was a majority French, and it still is a majority French area, where you were told in no uncertain way that the menu was all in English, and you tried, you said, okay, but can I speak French? I can translate it. No, I don't speak French. And it happened in big stores, and at that time, that's not so...
But those were things that you've changed, and you were marked by that, but those are things that you changed by legislation, by the Parti Québécois. But I do feel that we still have...
but may I just say one thing? Very simple. During my maybe too extended career in our party, which was, quote-unquote, rather radical on things that have to do with identity and things like that, if you look back and check, I probably was the main stabilizer in the sense that, oh, no, let's not go overboard, because we have to live together, and they have roots like us, the English-speaking community especially, for 200 years and more.
Do you think we're approaching a point where we're going to stop being hyphenated Quebecers? Because we still are.
In a sense, it's hard to think of no hyphen at all, because, look, we speak English right now, and your basic working language and things like that.
But I'm talking
English.
about the vrai Québécois syndrome.
The other part was, you know, East Montreal, and you, or all over Quebec, the working language, the day language is French. So there is a difference, and let's not just, you know, think we're going to.
Oh yeah, but I mean, I work in French and I speak French.
Nothing that keeps us from living together harmoniously, and I think it's more true than it was 20 years ago.
I think so too, but I think we're still Italo-Quebecers, Greek Quebecers, Anglo-Quebecers, and so on. And then there's the vrai Québécois.
As far as I'm concerned, we're all Quebecers, period. Because, look, you accept the makeup of Quebec as long as other people accept one idea, which is also basic, that the noyau, the key piece, historically and numerically of Quebec is French Quebec. That's true.
I'd like to go back to what you said about Montreal, because there's something in the book, in your book, Memoir, about Montreal that says, in Montreal especially, although we might ease up in certain residential areas, we must never again let the city center take on that bastard look we tolerated far too long with servile passivity. But what I don't understand is why, when you have a city like Paris and London, with signs in all different languages, why is that offensive to you?
It's not all that true, because I know Paris and London pretty well. Yes, there is more, let's say, easy tolerance, because after all, this is a country where, whether in Paris or Bordeaux or London or Birmingham or what have you, people know for centuries that it's their country, they're in charge, and there is a limit they can impose all the time. We're in North America. Well, look, but we're in North America.
Yeah.
And there's 6.5 million people in Quebec, about 5 million are French, I think, more or less, and that's it. So we're in a notion of English, which to me is not offensive at all, except that we have to keep our identity and take measures as to protect it. Now, take just two things to me in Bill 101 are basic, and I think the first and most basic is the language in the working place. There were days not so long ago when you couldn't go higher than that bracket in many businesses without knowing English as a priority.
And that has changed.
Well, that, not quite as much as I think maybe it should, but look, I'm not going to put pressure. I'm not in active politics anymore, but I know one thing for sure, that if French is not required as a language in the workplace and also for promotion, then we haven't done our job, which doesn't exclude English. We're in North America. But after all, I think, okay, let's go back to Europe or any country that's, you know, has a sort of normal setup. Nobody is, in Europe, some people learn 3 languages as a matter of course, but nobody will question the idea that you need the national language,
the core group,
the majority language, in order to get ahead in society. I think that's basic.
I have one last question to put to you, because it's something that I have suspected for a long time, and that is that you are really not an independentist. that beneath it all, because of the way you feel about the really hard line fundamental separatist, and also because of the protection you've offered to Anglophones, that you really are, I really believe, a closet federalist.
Okay, no, but I'm not rabid in the sense that, to me, it's not an end in itself, independence or sovereignty, or call it what you like. But having full mastery of your decision centers, I think eventually will have to come. We didn't get to it in the referendum, okay, but eventually it'll come out of development itself, because people will realize, and they are realizing, that there's a sort of low tide right now about things like that, which is normal. I think after a lot of high tide, there is a low tide. But eventually, Quebec will have to change its belonging to political institutions where we don't have many essential decision centers. I think it's inevitable.
Thank you very much.